Retro Quickies, Addams Family Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt. Okay, I played good cop with the first game, but now it's time for me to be a pig. Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt came out a year after the first Addams Family game, and once again hit multiple consoles, though not nearly as many as the first one, and was once again made by Ocean Software, and was, at least in terms of its look, more obviously influenced by the animated series rather than the live-action show or movies. The plot of this game is a lot more low stakes than the first, with Wednesday challenging her brother to go to each bedroom of each family member and retrieve an item from each. Rather than being a search action game where you wander around and solve puzzles, this one is a much more frenetic, straight-to-the-point platformer, where the idea is to just get to the end of each stage, beat the boss, and reap the rewards. The problem, though, is getting to the end of those stages. There is a bit of non-linearity to each stage, as flipping certain switches in the mansion can change the layout of the various places you can go, but in general, every path in an area is going to lead you to the same place at the end, one of the bedrooms of a family member, and there are certain paths, like the one that leads out to the gardens, that I don't quite get why it's there because it basically just leads you in a big circle. To the game's credit, you can basically tackle all the stages in any order that you want, and because of the game's horrible controls, most of them are on the same level when it comes to difficulty. Control is easily the biggest sore spot for this game. It's horrible. Pugsley moves really fast and has horrible traction, even while he's in the air, making precision platforming a nightmare, and considering your main form of attack against your enemies is to jump on top of them, though you can find other weapons scattered across the mansion, that's an issue. The hitboxes aren't quite as unforgiving as the first game, which is good because again, with how slippery you are, precise jumping is just impossible. This lack of control is also an issue because you have much less health in this game. You start with only 2 hearts, and while defeating certain bosses can get you a permanent heart upgrade, the lack of a forgiving amount of health makes getting through the obstacle courses a massive pain in the ass. The first game might not have given you much after hit invincibility, and was constantly ganking you with some unfair traps, but at least it gave you a really big health bar to make up for it. You don't have that luxury in this game, which doubly sucks when the game is still trying to gank you all the time. While there isn't anything like the chandelier trap in this game, there are plenty of enemies that will attack you from off-screen when you can't see them, or don't have knowledge that they're there. And their attacks come at you so fast you probably won't be able to dodge in time, and oh look at that, there goes half my frickin' health bar. The sheer amount of enemies, the combination of various patterns that they move in, and the need for precise platforming at times makes navigating through the areas of the mansion a chore, and every time you get hit, it feels more like the game's fault rather than your own. The first game wasn't perfect, far from it, up to and including certain traps that would just flat out kill you, but it mitigated its jank by keeping areas small and manageable, to the point where even backtracking wasn't that big of a problem. This game, on the other hand, feels like every area takes forever to get through, and while it does give you both unlimited continues and a password system to continue where you left off, it never feels like I can make significant progress through each area, and starting each area over from the beginning upon getting a game over fills me with dread rather than a sense of confidence in that I now know what I am doing. Even when not comparing it to the game that came before it, a lot of these problems make the game feel unpleasant to play. I can't say much about other versions of the game because I haven't played them, but I will say that this game doesn't really look or sound good either. It barely sounds at all, as most of the time there is no music playing during the game, not even during boss fights. There are sound effects, yes, and they're mostly inoffensive, but I'd prefer even just having a loop of the Addams Family, because there's just something weird about a platformer that is totally silent like this. The sprites are a bit more detailed, and I'll give them credit for the enemies looking a little less generic Halloween decoration-y, and the character sprites are much more in line with the animated series this time around, but most backgrounds are a flat color with no real detail to speak of, and the foreground is often just a simple repeating pattern, usually made up of single tile sets meant to represent whatever area you happen to be traveling through. The graphics aren't terrible per se, but they are really simple and fail to capture the same sort of feeling that the Addams Family is usually known for. Heck, unless you saw the box art for this one, you might not be able to tell that this was supposed to be based on the cartoon. So what have we learned from all this? Well, that unfortunately, for every good licensed game out there, there is at least one other that is going to disappoint, and maybe I set my expectations a bit too high after actually enjoying the movie-based game. But if the controls for this one were tightened up, it could be a decent platformer, if still frustrating at times. Who knows, maybe I'll change my tune when I eventually start covering Super Nintendo games and have to play through the SNES version for this one. You know, for completion's sake.